Hey guys, I have a revolutionary new theory about who the UA-traitor might be, and I want to submit it to Tekking's UA investigation contest. To follow the rules of the contest, I'm supposed to put something on the screen, but I'm not too good at video editing, so here's a Nyan cat, I guess. Alright, so I have this crazy new theory that the traitor is actually Hagakure Toru. Why, you ask? Well, damn, is it just me or is this cat really loud? Cat, shut up! Oh, okay, I'll be right back. Yelling at it doesn't work. I guess I need to learn basic video editing skills first. Okay, I figured out how to do some basic stuff. So, like I said, my revolutionary new theory is that Hagakure Toru, aka Invisible Girl, aka Worst Girl, is the UA traitor. I'll put a picture of her on the screen right now. Oh wait, that's just me and my cosplay of her. Pretty good though, right? Okay, here she is for real. Oh yeah, that is the one rule of the contest that I'll be breaking this whole time. There will be tons of nudes of Toru on the screen all the time. Look, here's a few more. I'll be sneaking those in this whole time as little Easter eggs, but for the non-ecchi ones, I'll need a little help pointing her out. Mushroom Girl, could you do the honors, please? Awesome, thank you very much. Now, I know what you're thinking.
This idiot thinks he came up with the Toru is traitor theory.
Okay, I get it, but hear me out, because I get into some stuff that I haven't heard anybody else talk about yet. I think it deserves a little bit of a look. So my theory is that Hagakure is not only the traitor, she's actually not even schoolgirl age. Let me explain. I first came up with this theory when I saw this panel of chapter 169, spoilers obviously. This is when the 1A kids are suggesting events for their cultural festival and everybody's just throwing out random ideas. Hagakure says this Bikkuri house thing. Now, if you're a normal American weeb like me, or even a normal Japanese school student like the rest of 1A, you have no idea what this is. I'll be honest, I spent some time researching it, and I don't even know what it is. Apparently, there is some subculture back in the 70s based around this magazine called Bikkuri House. Look, I don't know what it was, but it sounds culty. Regardless, the point is, it's a really outdated reference that nobody from the past 20 years would get, not much less the kids in 1A, and that's what started me down this little rabbit hole. Now, there are some other ways you could write this off aside from Toru being an adult, but I think they're all pretty unlikely. First of all, it could just be that, she has some obscure tastes, but like I said, this sort of subculture hasn't existed for some 20 odd years, so that seems unlikely. Next, there was a festival back in 2004 in Ikebukuro, so maybe it's some sort of inside joke that Horikoshi developed with his friends or something and decided to throw it into the manga. Personally though, I doubt it's a reference as obscure as that. Horikoshi's way too genre savvy to just throw in a reference that his fan base wouldn't get. Besides all that, he also went to college, way far away from Ikebukuro, so it seems pretty unlikely that he'd make it to that festival. Now, the other obvious problem with this theory is that Hiroaka's timeline takes place sometime in the future. We don't know exactly when, but we see modern hospitals when the first golden baby is born, and it's been generations since then, so a reference from the 70s would be too outdated even for an adult of the Hiroaka timeline. I have a couple of ideas how this theory gets around this problem though. First, even though it's technically set in the future, culture in the My Hero Academia timeline seems to be pretty much comparable to ours, so instead of thinking of the literal year when this Bikkuri House phenomenon took place, it might be more appropriate to think how long ago it took place. I mean, if it were actually, from the 70s in the Hero Academia universe, how would even Toru know about it? Nobody would know about it. It'd be ancient history. The other explanation is way simpler, which is just Horikoshi forgot that his story is in the future. I mean, the man's a genius, but it's always possible that he could make a mistake or two. But I don't think he's actually making a mistake here. I think he actually has considered all of this, so I'm just going to assume that my first explanation is right. I mean, it doesn't really matter either way. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, that was basically my biggest piece of evidence, and really the only sort of concrete one at all. All the rest of my evidence is pretty circumstantial, but I think it still is worth looking into. So, first of all, Obviously, Invisible Girl is invisible. I mean, it's right there in the name. Check out all these nudes of her, though. But even if she were older, you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at her, because she looks just as fine as she always has. Her hotness, or, lack thereof aside, though, she is pretty much worst girl. Her personality basically boils down to a generic, bubbly teenager. With the cast of characters as big as it is, even just within Class 1A, it's understandable that the author might want to slip in a few throwaway characters. That is, if the author were anybody but Horikoshi. Anybody who's an avid follower of the Hero Aka universe knows just how much of a fanboy this man is of his own series. With the amount of effort that he puts in, I find it hard to imagine they'd intentionally make a generic character in 1A. No, I think this is just a front that Toru puts up as an older woman trying to act like a teenage girl. I mean, alternatively, it could be that she really is enjoying herself, and that's how Deku and pals win her back when she reveals her true colors. I mean, she's invisible, so she doesn't really have colors. Either way, this feeds into my next point. Her room. It's just filled with stuffed animals and generic bullshit. When I first saw it, I thought, wow, this looks like someone said, well, I don't know what a normal girl's room is supposed to look like, so I'll just take my best guess. So, again, you could obviously write this off as Horikoshi trying to make her look generic, and this is what he thought generic looked like. Or it could be Toru trying to make herself generic. I obviously think it's the latter, and that she's trying to make herself appear as normal as possible, but has no actual idea how to really do so. And this brings me to my final point. Toru's sandbagging. Now, this sort of relates to the typical Toru-traitor theory, so I'll cover some of the more common points really quickly. Toru is one of the two characters who's absent during the UA invasion arc, along with Aoyama. In the forest training arc, Aoyama redeems himself with a clutch snipe, but Toru kind of just naps through the arc, along with Kyoko. She's also still unconscious when the 1A kids plan the Kacchan rescue, so that would explain why the League of Villains didn't have any sort of intel on that. That might not be super convincing, considering anybody from UA who wasn't in Class 1A also wouldn't be in on that conversation, but let's be real, the traitor has to be someone we really care about, so they're probably in 1A. When I was researching this, I also noticed that that conversation about the rescue takes place in the same chapter as the idea of the traitor is introduced. It's kind of suspicious to me that in that same chapter, right after the idea of the traitor is brought up, that it's specifically pointed out that there are people missing for this private planning session. As a result, that kind of stuck out to me. If you're wondering why I don't think this is evidence for Kyoko being the traitor, well, we've seen her home life and it just looks way too normal. Even if the teachers visited Toru's place, she could probably get away with claiming that her parents were invisible and bullshit her way through like that. If she's way better than we thought, she might even be able to use light refraction to make illusory parents. Who knows? Incidentally, she also mentioned it being a tough fight, which her classmates assumed to be that it was hard to convince her parents to move into the dorms. However, she could also be saying that it was just tough to fake her way through a home visit with Eraserhead, or that it was tough to convince the League of Villains to let her live at UA. We didn't get to see that visit, so it's all speculation, but I think it's worth considering. Anyways, I think Toru is just sandbagging really hard when it comes to fighting to hide her true abilities. Like recently in the manga when she went to go ambush Onomatopoeia Man, she doesn't even try to be sneaky. We've seen all of the other kids in 1A improve, and we've seen Toru practice moving silently, so there's no way that she'd make a move as dumb as this accidentally. I mean, compared to the final exam arc, when she's up against Snipe, a pro hero who specializes in marksmanship and is presumably pretty perceptive. Even though one of the win conditions for the exam was escaping, which one would imagine would be pretty easy for someone invisible, at least the easier of the two options, instead she sneaks up on him and cuffs him. Even if Snipe was distracted at the time and he was wearing weights, I think this proves that Toru is way better than she normally acts. If you're asking why she'd bust out her true skills here, my best guess is either A, as a villain, she wanted to test herself against a pro hero, or B, because Aizawa said that if you fail, you don't go to the training camp, and she needed to guarantee that she was there so she could tell the villains where it was located. So yeah, to sum it all up, I think that Hagakure Toru is not only the UA traitor, but she's actually much older and much more skilled than she lets on. Let me know if you think I missed anything, and thanks for watching.